And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com. Dan Strafford, when you can't pronounce your own name, it's not a good start to a show. Dan Strafford, Adam Scher, along with you on this Saturday morning, getting you ready for a 9-game main slate on Saturday night. We're going to skip the early games. There's a 2-game, 1 o'clock, a 4-game, 3 o'clock, and the 4-game, 3 o'clock will be in Slack chat. You can have some content behind the paywall, but it's ugly. I'm going to be honest. Chris Bassett is your most expensive pitcher. Have fun. Enjoy it. Have some fun. Maybe play around with MME, screw around with some settings, figure out some exposures. We're going to focus on this late slate to get you started here on your Saturday morning. As Emac says, if you're running some errands, right, Adam, that's if you're out running some errands on a Saturday morning, we're here with you. How the hell are you doing on this late Friday night, early Saturday morning?
Doing good. Friday's baseball slate was fun. Nice, relaxing Friday night doing a podcast with you at 10:15 instead of doing anything else.
Right. Well, I mean, what other way? I mean, when you were like 15 or 16, I'm sure when you projected forward in your life, on Friday nights, I'm really looking forward to podcasting with Dan Strafford. So
yeah, of course, it's like a dream come true.
Yeah, there it is. For me too. Let's be honest. But let's dive in to a slate that has pretty balanced pitching. There is some upside in the middle ground and some names that we like at the top from a talent perspective. We'll go through pitching, and then we'll talk about some top stacks. Of course, on Saturdays, you get a write-up from Adam behind the paywall if you want to be a member of Osmo.com. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD. That's the name of this podcast. One word, though, for the promo code gets you 50% off your first month of membership to Osmo Plus, which is our premium offering over at Osmo.com. And then you pay from there. That gets you the projections, ownership projections. It gets you lineup builder. It gets you access to all of the rankings and as well all of the premium write-ups, which Adam has for you Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Laffy is off through, I think, Friday. So you're going to get a lot of Adam in your life over the next few days. And Adam is marking off on the calendar all the times he gets to get Dave to pay him back during NBA season, which I'm sure will come at some point. But we dive in here. We'll talk through odds. We'll talk through spreads. We'll talk about walk rate, K rate. We'll talk about all the different numbers that will help you at least get a starting point of where you might lean for this slate. Jacob deGrom, the Kansas City Royals, 11-6 on DraftKings. I'll pull up FanDuel and Yahoo prices momentarily. On a slate in August, 11-6 for deGrom. We have a lot of variables, lots of new arms, lots of new bats joining the majors with youngsters getting called up, a variety of different options at different price points. Does deGrom at least pique your interest here, or is this 11-6 price point a little bit too expensive on a 9-game slate?
Yeah, he definitely piques my interest for a couple of reasons. For one, he has a good matchup against Kansas City. For two, looking at DraftKings pricing, there is at least one really, really cheap pitcher in a good spot for I have no idea why he's so cheap. But you can, pair deGrom with Jose Suarez against the White Sox and still not really be spending a lot of money. So I don't think it'll be too tough to get to deGrom. There is a pretty decent middle range too of pitching, so I don't think he's a necessity, but I think it's a pretty good spot for him.
Anything of concern for him? We've seen some lulls in his effectiveness this year. Obviously, no one expected. Well, I'm sure there are plenty of Mets fans who thought he was going to repeat what he did in 2018 here in 2019, but he's clearly regressed a bit. He's come back down to earth. Any red flags for you with deGrom where maybe you wouldn't take as much exposure as you might, or is this simply too good a matchup, too good a pitcher to really worry about that?
Yeah, I think it's just it's too good of a matchup, too good of a pitcher. Still having a really, really good season by pretty much any metric. Second highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Lamet at 31.6%, 3.31 xFIP. Still pitching really well. Has the best K-BB percentage as well. So, and then you get, this Kansas City team that really has 3 or 4 good hitters on the entire lineup.
And something we've been concerned about in the past has been runners against the Mets. deGrom's not been one of those arms, though. It's been mainly Syndergaard, and it has been Mats, right? DeGrom not as susceptible to the stolen base as we've seen Mets pitchers be in the past?
I'm pulling it up now, but if I remember, I think he's really had trouble this season. Like in the past, he wasn't, but this year I think he struggled with it.
All right, we'll take a look at that because something to be considered. I know the Royals have had some injuries and have some limited speed, but still a team that does like to run a little bit more than others. So you could see good.
Sorry, he's allowed 17 stolen bases this year in 148 innings. Last year he allowed 15 in 217. So definitely has taken a step backwards this year. 2014, 15, and 16 he was really good, and then he's been average to below average since.
All right. So I don't think it's so much of a negative that you need to stay away from him, but something to consider as you piece together lineups and see exactly what price points you're at. You mentioned Lamet. We'll get to him momentarily. You do have Ryu and Berrios 10-2, 9-8 respectively, and then Denilson, Lamet at 9,400. Eduardo Rodriguez, it's 9K. As I said, I'll pull up FanDuel prices momentarily. Of those four other pitchers at the top end, not in Coors Field, because we'll talk Marquez momentarily. Anybody of interest here? Ryu in Atlanta, Berrios gets Texas, Lamet in Philly, which is a bit of a bandbox. So if you're not completely on your game, you're going to see some home runs there. And then Eduardo Rodriguez against Baltimore. Of those four, anybody stand out?
Some interest in Lamet and Rodriguez. I think that they have upside. Lamet actually has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. Granted, he has made, I think, 7 starts this year.
Smaller sample size, yeah.
Yeah, but the strikeout stuff's always been there. The issue with Lamet is that in 6 of his starts, we haven't seen him even reach 90 pitches. He threw 104 pitches in the other start. That was against Seattle 2 starts ago. He went for 40 DraftKings points. But that was a game where he took a no-hitter into the 7th inning. They left him in. The weird part was he gave up the no-hitter at like 90, 91 pitches, and they still left him in to finish out the inning. So, and might have even brought him back out for one more. So it was really weird that the way they handled him in that game. But in general, we haven't seen him be given a really long leash. We haven't seen him go that deep. So lots of strikeouts, but there is risk as far as the pitch count goes. And then for Rodriguez, just a pretty good pitcher in a decent matchup against the Orioles. The problem against Baltimore is that there are some guys in the lineup that just don't strike out as much as I think people give them credit for. Santander is one of those guys. Anzer Alberto is a sub 10% strikeout guy. So while the active roster does have a lot of strikeouts on it, there's a chance that they run out a lineup that doesn't have a ton of Ks in it. But I still think it's a good spot for Rodriguez.
Yeah, you make mention active roster, 25.4% K percentage against lefties on the year. This is also a lineup that at some times during the year had some pretty good power numbers against lefties. You got to Renato Nunez was going hot for a while. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that the Orioles put up a crooked number here against Eduardo Rodriguez and could dash some hopes if you went heavy on him. Not to say that's probable, but it is possible on the slates when trying to figure out exactly where you're going heavy. I think that if you have a lot of Rodriguez, having a couple of lineups of Orioles as a hedge against that, if you're MMEing, isn't the worst idea in the world. I'll probably try to build a couple of lineups, see exactly where I get with some of these righty bats from Baltimore. We'll take a look at lines too momentarily. But I want to ask you about Herman Marquez. We talked a bit, not you and I, but I think the industry about John Gray in Colorado, 8K against the Miami Marlins. Good play, not good play because he's in Coors Field. What are we going to make of exactly how his night could go? As we record this, we are in the top of the 6th. It's 2-0 Colorado. He has 4 strikeouts. Probably want to see more than that, but he has 4 strikeouts. Now you get Herman Marquez. Do you think Marquez is a better pitcher than Gray? Matchup-wise, do you think he's in a better overall spot? Do you think this is a place where you're willing to pay a price point above 8K for the righty in Coors Field?
Yeah, I love Marquez here in the spot because he is affordably priced. If this game were in Miami, he would be over 10K, or he should be over 10K. So getting him at a discount is pretty appealing. The park obviously is not, but it's still a bunch of right-handed bats, and it's a bunch of terrible hitters. Parks can only do so much, especially when you're talking about a pitcher like Marquez that does have really good strikeout stuff. For the season, he has a 3.51 xFIP, 3.83 Sierra. So it's not like he's been bad by any stretch. It's still a really good matchup against Miami. So I expect I'll get to more Marquez than Lamet or Rodriguez.
I will say this: Coors Field can't put the ball in play.
Right.
So it's sort of the Billy Hamilton paradigm, right? Where if the ball's not in play, they can't get on base. And so I like Marquez a lot. When I saw his price point, it reminded me a lot of John Gray, and seemingly a price point that ownership wise, looking back at Gray, what is he, about 15 to 17%, depending on the tournament you're in, maybe a little bit less across, I don't know if you're in any higher dollar tournaments on Friday night. I don't know if he was less or more in the higher end, but that's a pretty good price point. I know it's a 15-game slate compared to a 9-game slate, so maybe ownership shifts a little bit more there. But I do like Marquez, and if he's sub 20%, I think that's a pretty decent mark to have him for a pretty big upside, I think, against Miami here. We get Anibal Sanchez, Jake Junis, Jordan Lyles to Zach Eflin, and Mike Fultonevich against the Dodgers in Atlanta. Anibal Sanchez has been a name I've not rostered once this year, but he's been a fairly decent Major League Baseball pitcher. He's been an okay DFS pitcher, depending on his price point. You have Junis, who we've talked many times over about his quote-unquote stuff, kind of guy that has the upside of not any pitcher, but a lot of pitchers in Major League Baseball, has upside for multiple digit or double-digit Ks, I should say, but hasn't really harnessed that over multiple starts. Lyles, we've rostered before, now with the Brewers in Washington, and Eflin gets the Padres in Philadelphia. What do you think of this mid-tier? We have a couple more names to go, but anybody that you think you could pair here to make for an effective tournament lineup?
I have some interest in Eflin. It's just a Padres lineup that it's actually missing some strikeouts with Tatis, but it's also missing one of its best hitters. Actually, I take it back because Eflin's been in the bullpen and he's not stretched out at all. So scratch that. I assumed he'd been in AAA, but that's not the case. It's a pretty ugly mid-range. Sanchez is decent, but he's not cheap, and he has a tough matchup against Milwaukee. Junis has a tough matchup against the Mets. Lyles has a tough matchup against Washington. I don't think I'll end up in the mid-range much. I expect that I'll end up just kind of getting either, if I can't get to DeGrom, then getting to one of Lamet, Rodriguez, Marquez, and then rolling the dice on some of the cheaper guys.
This has all the makings of Eflin throwing 90 pitches and having an elbow issue after this game is over.
Right.
Like it really does. Like he's reclaimed his spot in the rotation. It's going to be one where he's probably throwing decently well because the matchup has some Ks, and Kapler's going to let him run back out there, going to get into trouble in the 6th, and he's going to leave him in there until about 88 to 90 pitches, and then 3 days from now, we're going to hear how there's an elbow fatigue and then Tommy John by September. But and if that all comes to pass, I'm all done with this job, and I will never talk about baseball ever again. But I listen. The mid tier doesn't have the best matchups. Sanchez against Milwaukee, there's just so much power from the left side for Milwaukee. Junis against the Mets. Do you like Junis long term as a pitcher in Major League Baseball? You're somebody who dives into numbers a little bit more than I do when it comes to pitch mix and hitability and really the numbers that bear over time what a pitcher is going to be. I've seen plenty of people talk him up over the past 2 years as somebody who could break out. The Mets are a team that has had power, obviously, with Alonso. Amed Rosario's had a good run. You get some power in the middle of the lineup with guys like J.D. Davis and Frazier. Is Junis a guy long-term, maybe even forgetting about Saturday's slate, but that you're into and you think has upside? Or is he simply a number 3 or 4 starter for the Kansas City Royals?
Yeah, not really. He's got a really good slider, and that's something that always interests me as far as future potential goes. But right now he has no second pitch. His fastball is just absolute garbage. And so unless he finds something else that he can throw to get hitters off of, to have a pitch other than a slider. Like if you look at his numbers against righties, he throws his slider 38%, 19% swinging strike percentage, gives up no power, gives up no production, but he throws his fastball 29%. 531 WOBA and 443 ISO allowed. It just gets absolutely blown up. So he needs to either, I don't know, throw nothing but his slider and see if that works. But realistically, he needs something that is a quality pitch other than his slider.
That'd be great to see 100% sliders thrown at some point in a Major League Baseball game. What's coming? It's the slider. We know what's up. Let's continue on here. You made mention at the bottom end of the pool of Suarez already at 4,900. We have a number of names, 6,500 and under. It's Fultonevich. It's Asher Wojciechowski. He is pitching for the Orioles against Boston. Would seem like a blow-up spot for him. Logan Webb in Arizona. Eduardo for Texas against Minnesota would seem also to be in a non-prime spot. Is this Hector Santiago? He's still in the major leagues. Hector Santiago with a 7.11 ERA, a 1.1. Geez, bless his soul that he's still throwing. He gets the Angels, which is terrible. And then Clark and Hector Noesi, another name that amazingly is still in the majors. Anybody here on the radar? You mentioned Suarez. Is he simply just pair him up with the top-end guys and see what you get?
Yeah, Suarez is coming off of three straight negative games against Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Detroit. But you don't really, I mean, you just can't let recency bias, sway your opinion. He's not great. He's a 22-year-old prospect, 21 or 22. He's got decent strikeout stuff. So far in the majors, he has a 21% strikeout percentage, 8% walk percentage, 5.47 xFIP, 4.9 SIERA. None of the numbers are great, but he's facing a White Sox team that strikes out a lot, has one of the lowest walk percentages in baseball, one of the highest swing percentages, and one of the highest chase percentages. So I'm just willing to take my chances on a sub 5K pitcher. And you can kind of extend that even to Taylor Clark or Noesi. Taylor Clark, I think, is one of the worst pitchers that starts games in Major League Baseball. But he is in a pitcher's park facing the Giants at 4,800 on DraftKings, so I have some interest. And then Noesi's in a terrible park against the Rockies, but he's fully stretched out and he's $4,500 and he's got some decent strikeout stuff. So I think all three of those guys, because the mid-range is so suspect and so questionable, I don't mind taking a chance on these guys that I don't really think are great, because I don't think I need two pitchers to score 25 points for me to have a chance at winning this slate.
Taylor Clark's the guy that, if you look at his headshot, looks like he just smelled something really bad pretty consistently across almost all of his head. Like, if you just Google his images, it's either a really bad smirk or it looks like he smelled rotten eggs somewhere. And also has a really bad goatee. But hey, he's a major leaguer, and I'm here podcasting on a Friday night, so I have to give that to him. Quickly over on FanDuel, just to run through, DeGrom's 11.5, Ryu 10.7, Berrios at 9.1, Junis, Eduardo Rodriguez, Lamet. Let's see where Suarez is down at 5,800. This is a one-pitcher site. Any of these price points, Marquez is at 7,600. Would you take a shot on Marquez on FanDuel on a single-pitcher site?
I would get a ton of Marquez.
Okay. And then you have Suarez at 5,800. Is that cheap enough to go to him over on FanDuel as well? Sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to. I'd rather pay 7,600 for Marquez than 5,800 for Suarez.
Okay, so let's take a quick gander before we go at some of these lines. Let's talk some offense as well. We've touched on some of the pitchers that we are most intrigued by. Which offenses, at least at present, are on your radar the most for potential stacks on Saturday night slate?
So, I mean, Colorado would be the obvious one. You get a questionable pitcher in the Westie and a bad bullpen behind them in Coors. So, that's obviously a good spot. Angels are up there. Santiago was terrible in the minors this year. I don't expect him to be great in the majors either. You obviously have a lot of right-handed bats on this team that are pretty appealing. Minnesota and Texas against Eduardo, I think, are probably – I would say those are the top three. Like, Boston's a really good stack too. Wojciechowski has shown enough to where if Boston's really popular, I could see getting away, but I would definitely throw Boston in there. So Boston, Minnesota, Colorado, and the Angels. To
quickly run through, we don't have a line as of right now on Brewers Nationals. Not exactly sure why we wouldn't have. I don't know if there's a major injury there on offense, but don't see a line on that one. Padres Phillies -110 for San Diego, 9.5 over under, -320 for Boston and Eduardo Rodriguez. So if you're thinking quality start and win, there is some upside there for Rodriguez against the Orioles. 11 over under, -200 for the Mets with DeGrom on the mound, and 8 over under, -150 for the Dodgers against Fultonevich. Would seem like there's some power upside there, right, for the Dodgers bats with all the lefty potential power in SunTrust Park.
Yeah, I think it's another pretty decent spot. Like, I would rank him behind the other four teams, but tons of power in that lineup. They are really doing nothing but hitting home runs right now. Fultonevich is still pretty suspect as far as what he actually is as a pitcher. So, I like the Dodgers too. They're also affordable.
Amazingly, and this is not a number I would have expected, Foltynewicz on the year with just 0.84 home runs per nine. Don't know if that's an actual sustainable number and what's been a part of that. I can dive into that a little bit more, maybe share some in Slack chat tomorrow morning. But pretty shocked to see Foltynewicz below 1 on home runs allowed on the season. But quickly finishing off here, Diamondbacks, Giants don't have a line on that one. Looks like the Giants are undecided on who they're throwing out there. I've seen a couple different pitchers listed. Marlins, Rockies, 12.5. Colorado, minus 250. Then White Sox and Angels, no line there as well. I assume that's because games are still ongoing and injuries are possible. But that will do it for us. You find Adam over on Twitter at ChipMyMoneyDFS. You find him over in Slack chat as well. Always feel free to DM him with whatever questions you have about I kid. You can find him in office hours, which is something we offer over at Osmo.com Premium Plus. If you are a member, you get to get Slack chat. And then beyond that, all of the analysts who are writing and providing content also do office hours where they'll go through their processes. They'll go through Fantasy Cruncher. They'll go through any questions you have. You get an hour of their time each week specifically dedicated to your questions. So you get Adam for that. And you can also get Lofty and EMAC. You can ask him any baking recipes he has or anything along those lines. Josh and Jake and Alex, obviously, as well. From what I've heard, he's some sort of good DFS player, so you might want to check his office hours out as well. Find Osmo.com at Osmo_com on Twitter. As I said before, also, use that promo code EARLYBIRD. Gets you in for 50% off for your first month. And don't forget, Yahoo, DFS, sponsor of this show, is coming your way for NFL. Even Adam's going to play this because there is a $25 entry, 10 entry max, no management fee, no rake tournament the first week of the NFL. We'll probably see that duplicated a couple of times down the road, and then they have a $10 entry. It's a different price structure, a different scoring structure. It's sort of if DraftKings and FanDuel and someone else all got together and had some sort of weird, already established baby. But Yahoo is there for you to get a little bit different and think about your process different. So check out their offerings for week number 1 of the NFL. As always, great stuff from Adam. As always, check us out each and every day here on the DFS Early Bird. We're here Monday through Saturday. And then Sunday, you get the MLB Strategy Show in the morning, and you'll have plenty of NFL content once that starts in September. So for Adam, Dan, saying so long, best of luck on Saturday's night slate, and enjoy the next DFS Early Bird on Monday morning with myself and who's Chris? It's Chris Rendon. Me and Chris on Monday morning right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.